let's see. We need eight, I think, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that right, Tori? 8? Does that sound right to you? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 7:01. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Whoops. And I'll read the statement.
Okay.
Sorry. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with the emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are Karen Davenport, Robert Finley, Craig Roller, Sean Bridge, Nathan Holland, Evan Macbeth, James Cathro, and myself, Mary Catherine King, as well as I see Thomas Thorpe has just joined us.
Thank you.
Yep. Hi, Tom. Welcome. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the 5th and Avon Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar. County staff present at this meeting is Carolyn Schaefer, Tori Kanopoulos, and Cameron Langiel. I hope I got that right. Feel free to correct me, Cameron.
It's close enough. It's Langell, but
thank you. All right. So I'm going to give Carolyn just a minute and then we'll get started.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you all, this is my last meeting. Since you go back to in-person, you no longer need my Zoom talents to facilitate. I have truly enjoyed working with you guys over the past 2 years and learning about your community. And so I will miss you all, not the late night meetings, but I will miss getting to hear what's going on in the area. So I wish you all the best of luck moving forward. And if you go back to Zoom, you will have me again.
Thank you so much for your service, Carolyn. We appreciate it.
I'm going to stick around a few minutes. I see people popping in real quick.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Evan.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the 5th and Avon Committee express our gratitude formally in the notes and minutes to the clerk, Ms. Schaefer, for her excellent service.
Seconded.
Thank you all so much.
Okay. The next order of business, actually, thank you, Evan, is that Diane, who is our current secretary, has had to resign her position due to family health needs and some other things going on in her personal life. So we are in need of a new volunteer as a secretary. I don't know if anyone is interested in doing this long term, but if I could have at least one person maybe volunteer for tonight, that would help me out with running the meeting.
I can do it if you give a minute to go get pencil and paper.
All right. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. Let's see. While he is gone, we will talk about approving the minutes from our last meeting, which was in June. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes that were distributed via email. And at this time, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes. Karen Davenport moves. And is there a second?
A second.
Robert seconds. And is there any discussion or any suggested amendments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the June 16th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say aye or raise your hand. All right, it looks like the minutes are approved as presented. Craig, I'm assuming you don't want to do this long-term, or at least till the end of the year?
Well, 2 years was a long time. I mean, I guess if nobody volunteers, I can do it through December, but that would be it.
Sure, I understand. Is there maybe another volunteer as secretary?
Don't everybody speak up at once.
I might be able to pick up in January, Mary. Once we get a bit more of a handle on our family schedule once school's underway.
Okay. Thank you, Evan. It sounds like I have Craig till December and Evan after maybe. So I'll go with that. Is there a motion? I guess, do we need to have a motion to appoint Craig as Diane's replacement, Tori, technically?
Probably good to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a motion for Craig to be our interim secretary? Karen, thank you. And a second?
Second.
I see James's hand eagerly first. All in favor of Craig as secretary till December?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Craig. All right. And the next, excuse me, order of business. Next, we'll have Cameron the lead planning reviewer, and Ashley Davies from Riverbend Development present our community meeting for ZMA 2022-0002 SIG. Take it away.
Thanks, MK. I'm going to share my screen, so give me one moment. Can everybody see my screen right now?
Yes.
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 All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Langell, and I'm a principal planner in community development with Albemarle County. I've been the lead reviewer on this SIG property rezoning application. And so tonight I'm here to do the community meeting for this project. I'm going to give a presentation about how the development process works in Albemarle County, and then give a basic overview of the proposal. And once I am finished, then the applicant, Ashley Davies, she will go into the details of what this rezoning is looking like. So to begin, I'd like to just say that the purpose of a community meeting is to share information about zoning map amendments. It's also time to give an overview of the development review process. Members of the public and the CAC, of course, are invited to attend these meetings, and it's an opportunity for anyone to give input on the proposal. Any input that we receive at a community meeting does get forwarded to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors whenever the application moves forward to a public hearing. One thing I do want to say is that there's no formal votes taken tonight on whether to approve or deny this application, and it's simply informational only. So to begin, I'll talk about the development review process and how that works in Albemarle County. In Albemarle County, we have what we call a zoning ordinance. Every property of land in Albemarle is located within a specific zoning district. Zoning districts establish what kinds of uses are appropriate on land and how they can be developed. And we call that by right development. We also have what we call a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is a 20-year guiding document for the vision of the county and where we'd like to go. It contains overarching policies and recommendations that get incorporated into master plans and small area plans as they are adopted by the Board of Supervisors. The comprehensive plan and all of its recommendations are simply that, they're recommendations, but they do get factored into decision-making when it comes to different types of infrastructure projects or development proposals that are proposed in the county. So now I'll talk about rezoning applications specifically. In Albemarle County, we call a rezoning a zoning map amendment, and the acronym for that is a ZMA. And what a zoning map amendment is an application to actually change the existing zoning district that applies to a property to a different zoning district. We review rezoning applications as staff, and what we look at is the consistency that the project has with the master plan that applies to the land, Also, the comprehensive plan recommendations. We do look for any concerns when it comes to being in compliance with state and local authority standards and regulations. So that would be things like VDOT standards for road improvements, utilities, and things like that. And the Architectural Review Board is also a reviewer on these projects if the properties are located in what we call an entrance corridor. So a zoning map amendment is known as a legislative review. And what that means is that approval of a zoning map amendment is discretionary by the Board of Supervisors. The board does not have to approve a rezoning, and it's not like a by right development. We call zoning map amendment reviews legislative reviews. And as you see on this slide, we've listed some of the staff and different partner agencies that review zoning map amendments along with county staff. Again, VDOT, ACSA, Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority, if necessary, the health department and other state agencies as well. Ultimately, once staff is finished with the review of the application, we make a recommendation on whether to approve or deny the proposal. And then the ZMA goes to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation on whether to approve or deny the proposal, and that ultimately gets forward to the Board of Supervisors for a final public hearing, where the ultimate decision is made on whether to approve or deny the project. So now I'm going to give an overview of the specifics of the CAC property. As you can see on this slide, there's 7 parcels of land that are proposed to be rezoned by this application. In total, they're about approximately 145 acres. They are located on the south side of I-64 and then on the northwest side of Route 29. It's basically right next to the exit 118 interchange at 250 and I-64. These properties are located in the Samuel Miller Magisterial District. So across the 7 properties, there's 2 different zoning districts that apply right now. The first one is the R1 residential, and that applies to the 2 bigger parcels. And that zoning district allows development to occur by right for residential uses at 1 unit per acre. And the types of residential uses that are allowed are things like single family detached and attached homes. It doesn't allow for multifamily apartments. The other properties of land are zoned highway commercial. That's about 18.6 acres. That zoning district allows for a variety of commercial uses and service uses. It's generally oriented toward automobile related uses and then retail and service. Those properties can be developed for residential purposes if they obtain a special use permit approval from the board, and they can be developed up to 15 units per acre if that special use permit gets approved. And then there are 4 overlay zoning districts that apply to these properties. Those include the entrance corridor, the airport impact area, managed and preserved steep slopes, and then the flood hazard overlay district. So these properties are located within the southern and western neighborhoods development area, and that's the master plan that applies. And so the master plan contains recommendations for the future land use, what these properties should be developed as if they were to be rezoned or get a special use permit. As you can see here, there's 3 different colors on the slide. The first one, which is red, it represents the regional mixed use future land use category. And that allows for residential units up to 34 units per acre. It also calls for larger retail and service uses, as well as offices. The purple color represents the industrial future land use classification, and that allows for manufacturing, processing, assembly, research and development, storage, warehousing. You can also do large commercial service and sales, so that would be something like an automobile dealership. And then finally, the green color represents parks and green systems. That land use designation applies to properties of land where there's sensitive environmental features, so things like a stream buffer or steep slopes or a floodplain. And if what the master plan says is that if a proposal comes forth to redevelop those pieces of land, that those areas should basically be left undisturbed. They could be incorporated into something like a greenway or open space. Yeah, but that's the future land use recommendations that apply from that master plan. So this rezoning is asking to change the zoning district to the neighborhood model district. And that zoning district is a mixed use zoning district that intends to have both residential and non-residential uses. It does require 20% of the parcel to have open space, so areas that are not developed. Neighborhood model districts, if they are approved for a property, they get what is called a code of development applied to them. And a code of development is a specific set of development regulations that apply within that project alone. So a code of development establishes things like the permitted uses, other development regulations like building heights, square footage, density, setbacks. It also contains the standards for like the roads that would be within the proposal. And then specifically to see, what you see here is an image from their code of development. This is a conceptual illustration of what they're looking to do. And it's proposing a minimum of 500 dwelling units and a maximum of 1,365 dwelling units. It also includes a minimum of 100,000 square feet of non-residential land uses, but they could go up to 350,000 square feet. If you look at this image, you can kind of differentiate between the residential and non-residential areas. Most of the residential is on the left-hand side, so the southwestern part of the properties. And then the non-residential uses are primarily located on the right, so closer to that I-64 interchange. Again, the applicant will give a more detailed presentation on the specifics of what they're looking to do here, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of the code of development and how that would apply. So the timeline for this application right now, we've done one review of the project and it's currently under review with us for a second time. We're going to be sending comments to the applicant in an official letter by August 22nd. It could actually occur tomorrow, but for anyone who's interested, I can give you access to that review letter as well as all the application materials. We have them posted online. It's all public information. So if anyone wants to actually look at it themselves, get into a little more detail at home, feel free to send me an email and I can forward that to you. Right now, there has been no dates set for public hearings with either the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors, but that will happen at some point in the future. And just so everyone is aware, we do advertise the public hearing dates in the newspaper. We post signs on the property before the public hearing so that everyone's aware it's going to be occurring. And it will be posted on the county's calendar. Again, anyone can reach out to me at any time if you want to get an update and see if a public hearing has been requested or scheduled. I'd be glad to give that information to you. As you see at the bottom of the screen, I've got my email address, which is blangel@albemarle.org. And if you have any comments or questions about this project following this meeting, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be glad to share that information with you. So that concludes my presentation right now. I believe Ashley Davies is here and she's going to give you more information on the specifics.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ashley Davies and I'm with Riverbend Development. I'm also joined tonight. There are a few other people from my team that I think have not maybe been promoted to presenters, but would like them to be available maybe once we get into questions and answers from the group. So I have Scott Collins, he's our project engineer. So he's very knowledgeable in the project. And we also have members of our traffic engineering team if you have any traffic specific questions. But yes, thank you so much for having us tonight. We have been working on this rezoning and have owned the property now for, I think, at least a decade and have been working very diligently to put all the pieces of this puzzle together. So it's great to finally be in front of you and talking about it and getting your feedback on the project. So I am going to share my screen now so I can show you a few images. Thank you, Cameron, so much for your presentation. That was a great setup and background info on the project. Okay. Let's see here. Can everybody see my screen? Great. So one of the really cool things about this project is its location. As Cameron mentioned, it's 145 acres in the Samuel Miller Magisterial District. And so it's, you know, a sizable project for the county in one of the larger magisterial districts that has a relatively low population density right now. And the location is right kind of at the confluence of Interstate 64 and Route 29. So it has great accessibility to transportation networks. It's also, as you can see, right on the edge of Charlottesville. So when you're on the property, you almost feel like you're out in the Shenandoah Mountains, but you're literally just, right outside of the city limits. And so it's a really special place, we think. And I wanted to show this imagery because, so where my cursor is showing you kind of the area that includes the project, but all around it, I think what's really magical about it is you've got this accessibility to the future Hedgerow Park in Albemarle County, which is right around 340 acres that will have trail systems. I think the hope is to connect that in with the Ragged Mountain Natural Area, which is, I think, around 900 additional acres. And then you have all of Foxhaven Farm here. So it's really going to be well connected to at least 1,600 acres of natural area. So just a really interesting spot for a regional mixed use center with all the uses that we're proposing. So we're excited about all of that. And, it obviously is within the Albemarle, one of the 5 Albemarle County development areas, which comprise only 5% of the county. So this is, one of the areas that really is targeted for more dense development and growth, so we can preserve our rural areas. All right, let's get this to move. Hold on just a second. All right. Not being very fancy here. So this slide just is like a very, very basic view of the 7 properties that will comprise the CAC rezoning. And on the far right, you'll see the beverage distributorship that's existing on site. So they will certainly, they'll remain as is and will be improving the transportation network to and from that existing business. And it will be a part of the development, but it's not specifically included in this rezoning since it's an existing by right use. But what you see is towards the right, as you get really close to Interstate 64 and the exit 118 interchange, that is the area that we're showing land uses that are really more focused towards the regional mixed use center. And the idea behind that in terms of planning is really putting the most intensive uses of this development near the interstate, closest to the access points and existing businesses. And then as you move further to the south of the site and I guess southwest, the uses get less intensity, and then you eventually are right up against the areas that are no longer development areas, so the rural areas. So we're really stepping down intensity as we get to that kind of southwest border of the site. So that's kind of the general development strategy. You'll see on here the areas of green that will be kept as is as much as possible. And then also the water tank that will go on the highest area of the site and serve this development. This slide also shows the kind of the larger portions of our transportation network and how that links up all of the blocks that we are proposing. And this is going to be a bit hard to read on this slide. I can go to a separate PDF as we dig into discussions, but this is our application plan that is very similar to the previous slide in that it shows the blocks that we're proposing. It shows our basic transportation network, but this also, you can see indicated on here, the topography of the site. So there is quite a bit of topography that we are working with here, and that's that really determines in some ways how our road network has laid out. So we are doing, you know, we're developing the property, but we're trying to work with the grades as much as possible and really preserve the areas that have the more sensitive areas and critical slopes. So what you'll notice also on this slide is that there are 3 access points to Route 29, 2 primary access points, and then one, the existing Shepherd's Hill Road would be just kept as an emergency access that is going more into the residential area. But the primary access point would be a new road. There is the existing Gold Eagle Drive that we are going to make some improvements to, but that would be a right in, right out movement. And then we're currently studying on the new access point what makes the most sense for getting people out of the development and headed back towards Charlottesville. So our traffic engineers can speak to that if you have questions about the specifics of that. But in terms of our timeline, this is our second submittal to the county. So we're still very early on in the process, but we did recently add, we basically doubled the size of the development by adding this area on the left of your screen that's primarily residential now. So that is a big change. Let's go to our illustrative plan. So this is conceptual only, so it doesn't mean that this is exactly how the site plan for this development would look, but I think it gives you an idea, a very good idea of the mix of uses that we're thinking about, as well as the general placement of them. So if we go back to this slide, the red regional mixed use district and then the urban density residential district, those are the 2 primary districts in our neighborhood model code of development. So they each have different uses that are allowed within them. So the red area is obviously the more commercially focused and higher intensity areas. And then the urban density residential allows up to 34 dwelling units per acre in that land use. But if you're looking at, you know, what we've shown on site here, it's really, you know, you end up with something that's probably about 6 units per acre, given the commercial aspects of the site as well, and as much area that we're preserving in green space. But I'll just kind of point out the general aspects of the site. So I already pointed out the distributorship, and then immediately south of that, we're showing a convenience like gas station as you enter here. There's the potential, Did that go away for y'all? Okay, sorry, we'll try that again. So the areas that are in light pink and darker pink, those would be the more retail oriented spaces. Might be, there's some fast casual restaurants. There's the potential to do some hotels in those areas. We're thinking about a brewery. In the central area, that's kind of like the central commercial hub of the development that connects all the areas and, you know, the spokes of the project. And so there will be some gathering space as well as trails, like a trail system that connects all the various areas up in the northern kind of right-hand side of the site. And I'm sorry that I've lost my cursor is not showing up, but that is, we're showing some commercial office area as well as a congregate care facility. As you move to the left of the screen, the brownish buildings are multifamily development that's all really easily accessible to the commercial areas. And then as you go from there, there's a variety of housing types, including townhouses, villas, single family, and affordable housing that we will build on site. I think I mentioned the trail system. So you can see that that will be a connection that not only is an amenity throughout the site, but it will also, we're working with both the county and the adjacent property owners to create an entrance point to the hedgerow park. And so that'll be, you know, this could be really one of the primary entrances to that entire park area, and just kind of imagining people parking within the town center area and having a beer, you know, going for a bike ride, going for a hike, coming back, meeting friends for a beer. And then just kind of to the south of that central town center area, we also are looking at creating a new park and ride space. There's a park and ride that exists across 29 right now. And we would be adding that to this site as well as a public amenity. All right. And, you know, I think that kind of gives you a general feel for the development. And maybe we could just open it up to questions and discussion, and we can pull in the other people from the team.
Actually, if I could ask, what were the names of the other folks? I think we've got Scott in here.
Yeah, there should be Mike Bailey and Natalie Rubo.
Okay. We're pulling them in right now.
Great.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate the presentation. It looks like we do have some questions lined up.
Great.
Did you want us to go ahead and start with those?
That's fine. Yeah. If you don't mind just calling on people, we'll take them as they come.
Okay, Roger.
Okay. Hi, Ashley. Thank you. So this is going to sound a bit counterintuitive, but I'm wondering, given all the development pressures for residential units, why there's so much green space left over, particularly since, as you mentioned, it's adjacent to the other natural areas around. So that's one part of the question. Second part of the question is, the code of development plan you show, is that maxing out the the maximum square footage and maximum units that Cameron presented in his slides. And another question is just about the comprehensive plan and its intent to have industrial space. And I'm wondering if there's a possibility both to include more industrial space so the county doesn't lose that, as well as the residential.
All right.
So, sorry for throwing all those in there, but
that is a lot of questions. So if I miss anything, just remind me and we'll circle back around to it. But I think this slide is the most helpful in talking about the green spaces, because really the areas that we are leaving as natural and undeveloped, those are the areas that are off limits to development. And some of them are even designated, as Cameron mentioned, in the comprehensive plan. So they're just meant to stay as is. And a lot of them are very steep and, critical slopes. So you really don't want to mess with those areas. So that kind of leaves us with the portions of the site that are in white here. We are having some impact to slopes, but we're trying to minimize that as much as possible, since that's also a goal of the county. But this is the best slide to kind of really show you what's left of the land area that can be developed. I think, when you look at this sort of thing on a sheet of paper, it's like, it's just really not the same as being out there. When you're out there, it really is a mountaintop. And so even when you think about things such as, plans for massive industrial developments, this really just, this is not the site for a bunch of really large footprint buildings because of the topography that we're dealing with. So in our plan, we try to be as responsive to that as possible by really utilizing, you can see in this kind of upper right-hand area, it's not quite as steep as some of the other portions. That also happens to be the block that is, closest to the interstate and 29. So happens to be a good location. But yeah, with our plan, we really have switched some things around, noting that, as you get to the south and the west of the site, you're really hitting the areas that have a lot of topographic challenges. So in order to work with that type of land, you need the smaller buildings. So you see a lot of the smaller residential unit types, because those are really able to step up the hillside in a way that you wouldn't see like some type of big box retail or a really large office or industrial building with the parking that goes along with that. You'd really would have to kind of blast off the side of the mountain to do that type of development. So it's less appropriate for that area of the site. But as you get further to the right, and we have been working with Roger and his team in economic development and on the office buildings that we're proposing. So that's the more kind of job center uses that the county is looking for as part of this development. So we've been in very close contact with them, and they've had really favorable reviews of what we're proposing so far with that specific component as it relates to the comprehensive plan. And then finally, so this plan that you're seeing in front of you, this doesn't max out any of the uses that we're showing. And really, like you would never, it's a bit hard to explain, but you would never see a plan that maxed out every element that we're considering in the rezoning. And that is because this entire development is really governed by the traffic patterns and people being able to get in and out of the site. So that's going to be kind of the natural determinant of the mix of uses that you can actually achieve on the site plan. But at the level of the rezoning, the idea is that you want to maintain a certain level of flexibility, and then that gets more and more specific as you work through the site plan process with county staff and the traffic element. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Roger. James?
Hey, Ashley, I super appreciate your presentation. Just wanted to ask a couple of, I think, probably fairly straightforward questions. First, I noticed in Cameron's presentation, the variance between the minimum number of dwelling units and the maximum number of dwelling units was like several orders of magnitude, and the same thing between the minimum square feet and maximum square feet for non-residential uses. And I'm wondering sort of when you might think about dialing that into a more specific number, because that's obviously going to have huge implications on traffic patterns and school districts. And then anecdotally, just living in this area, I know those left-hand turns out of this development onto the 29 are going to really suck. So I'd appreciate the input of your traffic engineers to tell us about what that might look like, and wonder if part of the proffer of this development is any improvements on the, on the 29 corridor to make those left-hand turns a little bit easier.
Great. Yeah, those are really good questions. And so I think like if you're looking at this conceptual plan right here, it's showing, I think, approximately like 825 units. So it's kind of, maybe halfway in between the minimum and the maximums that we've talked about. And then the commercial elements are, everything's probably about like half of what we've talked about in the rezoning. So as we move along in the process, like you said, I think those numbers will get a little bit more dialed in. We will maintain some type of range. And for anyone that wants to look at another rezoning that we did, I think 5 or 6 years ago, a great example is the Brook Hill rezoning that's going in up near Forest Lakes as you're kind of going up to the airport. And it's a very, very similar proposal, larger site, but just the idea that you do maintain a range, but and we can pull in the traffic engineers, but it really does end up being determined by what will the main access point to the site allow for, and really maintaining great levels of service on Route 29, as well as making sure that entrances and exits to the site are really functional as well. So it is a balancing act, and it's not easy to just draw like one line and say this is exactly what it's going to be. But as we've been looking at the site and considering a variety of uses, if you start, we definitely added more residential as we brought in the second part of the site. So that did require that we dialed down some of those really high intensity commercial uses, because the access point just wouldn't be able to handle it if you get beyond a certain level of development. Did that help? Did that help at all?
It did. Yeah, I'm concerned sort of saying, yes, I think this looks a good idea until we get a little bit more mature in that process of what's it really going to look like, because the difference between 400 and 1,500 residential units is a substantial difference in terms of the number of services the county needs to provide. And same thing with the number of gas stations or sort of highway uses. It's going to really change the flavor of what this development looks like. And the second part of that question, you alluded to it, but I'd be curious to know sort of what is the plan for those entrances and exits, specifically thinking about residents who live in that community trying to make that left-hand turn to access Charlottesville and all the good stuff that's there.
Okay. Mike or Natalie, do you want to talk at all about some of the solutions that we're researching right now? I don't know if they're promoted where they can.
Sure, Ashley, I'm on. Also, we've got Carl Holtgren on. He's with Grove Slade too. He and Mike swapped out. So if you could promote him to presenter as well. But yeah, there's a decent amount of left turns and we are looking at alternative intersections still, trying to decide what's the best one to be able to get all the cars out and back to Interstate 64. We've looked at some R-cut and then conventional signals and green tees so far, and we're still trying to decide which one's best.
Is that something that the developer would pay for, or would that be on the county to improve?
No, I believe we would install this part as part of the project, the developer.
Can you explain what a green tee is and an R-cut, please?
Sure. So a green tee, what we were looking at was for the main entrance site driveway that Ashley was talking about. So it would be, yeah, right there. So the green tee would allow the left turns to exit the site while not stopping the northbound or northeastbound traffic on Route 29. So they would be free flow, but it would only stop the southbound in order to let those left turners out. And then they would, the reason that it wouldn't stop the northbound traffic is that the left turners would be able to turn into the median. We would construct a median acceleration lane. So that would enable the left turners to get up to speed in order to merge back into the normal Route 29 traffic. And then the R-cut is a different configuration. So that would actually restrict the lefts coming out of the main site driveway. They would have to instead turn right out and then U-turn at a median break that is south of that, driveway somewhere down Route 29, and they'd have to U-turn at a signalized U-turn and drive back up north on 29.
Okay, that's super helpful. Very anecdotally, again, that seems like those would both be subpar solutions to that left-hand turn. But I'm sure your engineers know better than I do. I know I would hate both of those solutions as somebody living in that community trying to turn left out of there. So thank you. I appreciate the input.
Thanks, James. I'm just going to add that a stoplight in the southbound lane there is never going to work. If you've ever been on 29 headed south and at the Fontaine exit at 5 o'clock any day of the week, you cannot stop those people because it'll be backed up for miles and miles and miles and miles. Okay, David.
Thank you very much, everybody. Hey, Ashley, it's good to see you.
Hi, David.
Was there, and this might be for Cameron as well, was there a narrative beyond the February narrative in the file? Because that's the only one I saw.
David, I don't think we updated the narrative. We just updated the code of development in between the two times.
Right, I think I saw the latest on the code of development. I wanted to make sure just I had seen the narrative. What school districts are these? What elementary, middle, high schools is this for, zone for right now?
Cameron, do you know? I think this is Mountain View, but I could be wrong. We haven't heard much of any feedback from the schools as of yet. Have you heard anything, Cameron?
I haven't heard anything from the schools, but to answer the question about which districts these properties are located in, all 7 properties are the same school districts at elementary, middle, and high school level. And the schools are Red Hill Elementary, Walton Middle, and then Monticello High School.
Okay, thanks. That's what I thought we were looking at Red Hill, of course. Well, I don't know if, of course, everybody knows. Red Hill is down off Red Hill Road. It's a rural school of about 200 kids. It sits on a septic field. Using the numbers that we looked at for the most recent development that proposed around the same number of homes in this part of the county, that would be anywhere from about 100 students on the schools to about 260. I think many of the people on the committee know. Actually, I'm not sure you do, but I serve on the school's long range planning advisory committee as well as the CAC. And about 60 of those, if we were at the bottom level of those 100, would ultimately be Red Hill students. And Red Hill's right now, over the next 10 years, basically at capacity. So that's going to be a big problem. And certainly if we end up at 875 or 825 homes in the shown here, that'd be about 160 kids or close to 90 at Red Hill. And that would certainly, that's just not going to be possible. I mean, we can't have that many bodies on the site with that septic field. We looked at expanding Red Hill as one of the options for Mountain View to address the overcrowding there, and it just wasn't going to work. So I have some serious concerns about how the schools are going to be impacted here. And there was no mention of the schools at all in the 4-page narrative. And so that worries me that you haven't considered this, or the developers haven't considered, the owners haven't considered this piece. You brought up the Brook Hill development, which you said was about a similar number of homes and uses. And that site proffered a 7-acre elementary school site and a 61-acre high school site, both of which properties the school division is actively looking to use. So I think that when you brought up Brook Hill as a good example, I think that maybe something along those lines, since that's the sort of the counter you brought for us there. So I just wanted to, I know you haven't heard back from them. So if you do hear back from them, you can let me know what you hear, and I'll sort of nudge them as well a little bit in our next meeting. So I guess that's more of a comment than a question. I apologize for that. I do want to ask questions about this layout. They're sort of all combined, and it does stick sort of on my theme. It's where do kids play here? There's that tiny little pocket park, which is a triangle, it looks like, surrounded by some townhomes. That looks like maybe a little open space they could play at. And then sort of right in the middle of the project, there's that green space across the street from the stormwater retention. And I can't tell where else they would play. I know that you talked about a connection to the trail system that would ultimately lead to the park, but I don't know where kids play here. So maybe you could help with that.
Sure. And thanks for those comments. I just wanted to make, I guess, 2 clarifications for the group that the Brook Hill property is actually twice as large and twice as dense as what we are looking at with this concept plan. So the Brook Hill property is right around 300 acres. That does not by any means alleviate any concerns that you may have with the school system. So just wanted to make that point of clarification. And I did have some conversations with schools before we submitted, but that was like very preliminary and didn't hear concerns then, but the project has really morphed since then. So all that to say that like we welcome those conversations and really want to hear back from them as well to continue those conversations. And then, so for the project, there are 3 primary civic areas beyond the 20% open space that's being preserved. And so the 3 main civic spaces, there's the green space that goes kind of with the village center There's space within kind of the multifamily development. And then there is park space that'll be associated with the neighborhood here. And like I said, in addition to the trails and green space that's surrounding, that gives you access to all the acreage.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. When you say open space, are you talking about the green space, the stuff that's on the steep slopes that it's not going to be developed, that'll stay wooded, right? Is that when you say
Correct.
Open space?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, some more green space, right, than open space. And then lastly, I noticed in the Code of Development that it's really a traditional, and this is more of a traffic piece, with sidewalks on each side. I didn't see any multi-use paths. I didn't see any encouragement to get people out of cars within the neighborhood. Right, if you've got a 12-year-old who wants to go up to that pool and lives in the single-family homes, if they could get on a multi-use path or multi-use surface next to a roadway instead of being in the roadway, I know a lot of parents would like that. And certainly as laid out here, I know this is preliminary, the trails don't really connect into that part of the residential piece. And so I'm just would like to encourage maybe some reconsideration of those roadways and look instead of a lot of sidewalks and curb and gutter and bike lanes. I know there are bike lanes included, but we know that protected bike lanes aren't as good as getting the bikes out of the roadway, and because bikes never win when it comes to a collision between bikes and cars. So if there's a way to get maybe some multi-use paths out there where kids can bike to those big common spaces, especially if they're on the far side, I think that might go a long way. So apparently I'm of a theme today with my comments and my questions. And thank you, Ashley, for being patient with me. I appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for that feedback.
Okay, thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. Craig is next. And I just want to quickly say, Craig, before you go, to the attendees who are not on our panel, I am monitoring, and I know a couple of you have your hand raised. You are in line, so I will get to you as soon as I can. Craig is next, though. Thank you, Craig.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I just have a couple follow-up questions about traffic patterns. First of all, has there been any conversation with VDOT about any future plans or changes to that 2964 corridor? I know they made some recent changes to make the left on the 64 East, which I'm not sure is better than it was before. And you talked about coming out of the neighborhood and getting into an acceleration lane, but there's no room to accelerate before you get to the light to allow traffic to go onto 64 East. It just doesn't seem like there's enough room there. So I don't know how you make it any better, but does VDOT have any future plans to maybe do a diverging diamond? And how that would affect access to the neighborhood? Because right now it just doesn't seem feasible to me or safe.
So to answer your question, we are working very closely with VDOT on the project design and review, and all of, they have very specific design guidelines and spacing requirements for any of the improvements that end up going in relationship to this project. You are right that, it does present some challenges when you're so close to the interchange. It's great for a lot of these uses, but in terms of traffic control, that can create challenges. But for any of the designs that we've submitted to VDOT thus far, they are compliant with all of their spacing and acceleration lane requirements. And they take into account everything that VDOT has planned for the area.
Next we have Sean.
Okay, and thanks, Ashley, for the presentation. And as someone that likes to hike and drink beer, I like the idea so far. And this is similar to some models I've seen some other cities of similar size. So I like the overall idea. I'm going to reinforce a few things that other folks have said, not because I like the sound of my voice, but just because I want you all to make sure you hear that there's multiple people on this committee that have similar concerns, but I'll keep them brief. As far as traffic, I think any sort of mixed use development of this size needs probably 3 main sources of ingress and egress versus 1. Obviously the 29 interchange is its own issue. And I think James and David and Craig all hit on that. I don't know how you solve the problem, but so far, I don't think anything we've heard is adequate. Forced right turns coming out of there isn't going to solve the problem. Stoplight's not going to be feasible. I also just don't think, the volume you're going to have with 825 homes, plus all the commercial use is going to overwhelm one intersection coming in and out. Also from the school sense, what we've seen consistently from the models that are used is that the projected school children number for 825 homes is woefully inadequate. If it's projected at 200, it's probably more like 500 or 600. We've seen that consistently be underestimated. And so when we're factoring that in for the approval, and I say this for the benefit of Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, we need to look at this realistically for the impact on schools. From a location sense, this would be an ideal location for a school or two. I know the topography doesn't allow for that in some of the green space, but I'd certainly be interested in substituting some of the residential for a school, given the proximity to 29 and 64. And one more question, and then I will let you guys move on. You mentioned a FEMA floodplain, with some changes to that. Can you just expand on that just a little bit? I didn't quite pick up on all that.
I think Scott would need to comment on any floodplain issues. Scott, are you on?
Yes. Yeah, certainly we have FEMA floodplain sort of along the Route 29 corridor that drives how the site will look and be developed along Route 29. So I think the floodplain jumps over across the street and back over about 2 or 3 times along the length of this property. So making the location of the entrances pretty well set based on how it crosses 29 and the locations that it does.
Scott, is that the dotted lines on this?
Yes.
Okay, so you can
That's
kind of
right.
see how that weaves up and then back under 29.
Gotcha, that's helpful. So it looks like with the main entrance you have proposed, as well as the kind of the secondary entrance closer to the J.D. Sieg plant, the only other place you could put another entrance would be where you have the emergency service road down by the southern end of the development.
That's correct.
Thank you, guys. That's it for me.
And Ashley, can you hear me? This is Carl.
Hey, Carl.
Hello. Sorry, I was muted a minute ago when I was trying to talk about the green tea. And sorry for joining late. I was coming from another public hearing that I wrapped up a little bit early, so I joined at about 7:30. But I'm Carl Holtgren with Grove Slate, traffic engineer on the project, and just to a couple of points about the green tea that we're looking at. It's not the final answer, but it's an option that we're looking at for the main driveway. We found that it will not be overwhelmed. It'll operate at a level service D, which is except the level of service that we designed for new traffic signals, and it'll be a partial signal that only stops the southbound traffic. And we'd be glad to send you the traffic study so you could read the details on that. We've made a couple submittals to VDOT, and we've been coordinating very closely with the county and VDOT on the access and exactly how to handle that main driveway. And in terms of the acceleration lane, you're correct to be concerned about the distance from the main entrance up to the 64 ramps. And that's something that we've looked at closely. And that's why the driveway is located where it is, to give enough acceleration distance to get people up to speed, and then they can safely merge over onto 29 and go onto 64 eastbound if they need to. So I just want to make those couple points. And like I said, we'd be glad to make the traffic study available if you'd like to look at it.
Yeah, Carl, this is Sean again. I appreciate that. Again, as I'd caution planning commission supervisors, similar to the schools, we've consistently seen that VDOT's estimates for what intersections can handle and what daily trips actually occur far outweigh what those estimates are. And we see that in pretty much every new development that's been approved in the last 5 to 10 years. So I think we need to look at this for planning for future as well as current use that's actually used versus an antiquated VDOT model.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Sean. I stuck myself in line here, so I'm going to go ahead very quickly and just say I agree with Sean a little bit, and I appreciate you wanting to offer the study. But, there's already been one fatality that I know of at the intersection, the new light, turning people across 29 to get onto 64. And as I mentioned, 3 out of 5 days a week, traffic is currently stopped on 29 southbound, backed up past the Fontaine exit, almost to Ivy, sometimes past Ivy. If you leave town that way any time of the week, you know that happens 3 of 5 days of the week. So I don't know that the numbers work. I do understand that a lot of that traffic enters 64 in either direction, and we are south of that. So hopefully they've allowed for that in the study.
Right.
My concerns are, some of them have been said. I think you need to allow more space than you currently have allowed for amenities for the residential areas. Parks, playgrounds, interior walking trails, multi-use paths, as David said, ways for children to get around, places for children to play, pools, different types of amenities that the residential developers are going to need and want. And I also think that you should think really hard about the school situation. If you live in our community, then you're a member of our community, and you know that we have a school problem. We have, most of our elementary schools are at capacity, and the county is desperately looking for land to add a school. It doesn't need a lot of flat land. David had a good point at one of our recent meetings. We can do vertical schools. We can do vertical schools, we don't have to do sprawling schools. So even if it's a small community school, it doesn't need to be a large elementary school. It doesn't need to have 850 students. But we have to start building for those, and we need to start including space for those in our communities. All right, next in line is Robert.
Okay, well, I think a number of my concerns have been adequately stated. Certainly the schools issue is a major one. We've seen other rezoning requests where the applicant has actually provided information about schools and what the, whether or not we agree with the numbers, which we often don't. But in the material that I reviewed, I failed to see actually any discussion of the impact on schools. And I think that's a pretty glaring deficiency of the application at this point. I was also disturbed by the variability in the number of potential units. I was a little bit heartened by, Ashley, by hearing you say that the conceptual plan sort of allows now for about 825 units. I would point out that the addendum to your traffic impact analysis with your site trip generation table is basically 300 single family detached or attached units and 525 apartments. So it is perhaps the number that you quoted there of 825 actually derives from your traffic impact analysis. So I would think if it winds up being any larger to any greater extent than that number, I think that traffic impact analysis would have to be revisited. So other than that, I think the other folks have pretty much covered my concerns. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Next, we have one of our attendees that is not on the committee, Emily and Slava. Tori, can you permit them?
Hey, Evan had his hand up also, I think.
He does, and I am trying to go in order, and so I will get to Evan soon. Thank you, though.
I think they should be able to speak now, hopefully.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, this is Emily Anderson. Slava is my husband. And we live in the Sherwood Farms neighborhood, which is across the road from this development. In my opinion, it's nice to see something being done with this parcel. But in listening to the traffic engineers and looking at the entrances, I'm seeing really no consideration for entrance and exit from our neighborhood. There are above 50 households, and I just want to make sure that I understand the way the traffic will work. So I'm seeing that the median will be closed at our entrance. So if I say want to go south on 29, I'll have to turn right and then get off at the Fontaine exit and then get back on 29 and then go south. And that, and then if I'm, say, coming home from Charlottesville, which I do every day, and I want to go to my house, I have to go, past and then do a U-turn and then go in this acceleration lane and then cross 2 lanes of traffic in a very short distance to turn right into my neighborhood. And it just really, the traffic, as people have been saying, is already quite bad here in the afternoon. And I'm just really, this doesn't seem like a safe way for me to drive to and from my house. So anyway, I just would like to hear if I'm interpreting it correctly, and if, the developer has really thought about our neighborhood's entrance and exit.
Thank you, Emily, for your comments. And I'll let maybe Carl jump in on that one, but I will just say that at this point, VDOT has us evaluating, every single possible option for what the transportation improvements might be to not only get people safely in and out of this new development, which has its own challenges, but how are we making sure that we are taking your neighborhood into account as well. So, I think that your description of the median being shut down with the green T option is correct, except you wouldn't actually utilize the green T to go back north. Carl can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be the next U-turn point. So you would not be utilizing that acceleration lane because that actually, I think, goes beyond teal lane. So that wouldn't be the right option, but we definitely hear your frustration. And I don't know, Carl, if you want to add to that, that we are kind of looking at probably at least 3 to 4 options that they've had us, researching the pros and cons of each, knowing that probably whatever we do is not going to be 100% loved by anyone.
Right. I I guess I'm concerned because, you know, obviously it will make our commute a lot more annoying. And I've also, you know, seen in the Albemarle Comprehensive Plan that in the guidance for this particular area, one of the considerations for the development is preserving the left turn movements from Teal Lane onto 29 going south. And I just really don't see that.
Right.
Thanks.
And I could,
Go ahead, Carl.
yeah, I'll speak to that. And we definitely hear your concern and understand the difficulty of the left turn movements under this plan. And as Ashley said, there are a couple options that we're looking at for the access point, and we're working with VDOT on those. The green T option would require that median break to be closed to make both sides, both Teal Lane and Gold Eagle, right in, right out, because that's right about where the acceleration lane would be ending. So we need to close that median to allow those people to merge over. There are other options that we're looking at that would not require the median to be completely shut down, and you would still have the ability to make the left turn in from 29 in the southbound direction, and the northbound left onto Gold Eagle would also be preserved, but the side street left turns are almost certainly going to be cut off due to VDOT spacing standards. You know, that median break simply doesn't meet current spacing standards from the interchange ramps. But there are options that would only partially shut it down, and at least you could still make the left turn in to Teal Lane. But yeah, we definitely are taking that into account. You know, not just your neighborhood, but there's the park and ride area, and the VDOT. You know, VDOT has a maintenance, you know, center there on Teal Lane as well, just to the north off of this map. So we're we're trying to factor in, you know, how this impacts everybody. So we definitely hear you and understand you, and we're trying to come up with a plan that's you know, as painless as possible. I'll put it that way.
Thanks for that. I guess I just don't want to feel like we're the ones having all the pain, you know.
Right.
So thank you.
Understood.
Yeah. Evan Macbeth on our committee is next.
I'm not a traffic engineer and I'm not a developer, but I don't know that I've ever seen a more clear-cut case for a roundabout in my life. And I just would hope that would be considered. Just drop a roundabout at Teal Lane. The cars coming up Route 29 from the south to the north are the ones who caused that fatal accident. They should be slowing down sooner. Drop a roundabout there. Just a thought. I could be wrong. There could be reasons that are good not to do that. But the fact that it hasn't been brought up at all by anybody is quite shocking to me. The other thing is, with regards to the school, there absolutely needs to be a school property here. Right now, the kids that would be going to middle school from this property, we're going to Walton, they are going to have to get picked up before the sun gets up for about half the year. I don't know about you, but I don't think many parents are going to want their 10-year-olds waiting at the bus stop before the sun comes up in order to get to school. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Evan. Carl, can you talk about a roundabout option?
Sure. Actually, we did not evaluate a roundabout at Teal Lane, but we did have to evaluate one at the proposed driveway, where we're talking about a green T and some other options. You know, VDOT requires us, anytime a new traffic signal is being considered, we do have to evaluate the possibility of a roundabout. And we've done that in this case. You know, VDOT's simply not in favor of it. It's in this location because Route 29 is a high-speed expressway, you know, designed to get people from point A to point B. You know, it's not a great application for a roundabout. You know, they're not appropriate everywhere. You know, we see them a lot in neighborhoods and shopping centers, you know, collector roadways to help distribute traffic and calm traffic. But VDOT considers 29 to be a principal arterial. So it's very rare that you would see a roundabout on a principal arterial like this, but it is something we did look at.
Forgive me. I moved here from Loudoun County, and I will see Route 29's principal arterial and raise them Route 50, which has roundabouts on it. So I get it. I do. This seems like something we probably need to take up with Senator Deeds maybe or something, if that's what the issue is. Just my thought.
Evan, the other issue with the roundabout in this location is roundabout needs a lot bigger footprint than other.
That's why I was looking at Teal Lane.
Intersections.
That's why I was looking at Teal Lane.
I understand. But you also have the crossing of the stream right there at Teal Lane.
That's fair.
Creek. So when you start talking about a roundabout and you start talking about the floodplain and everything else, there's a lot of push and pull there. So it's not as simple as just impact sitting up roundabout there that just takes up twice the amount of footprint that other intersections take up. So
I totally understand, but it does seem to solve the neighborhood access. It seems to solve the VDOT access. It seems to solve the southbound left. I'm not saying it's easy. Right. I don't think I've ever seen a clear-cut case for one in my life.
Thank you, Evan. Next from our attendees, we have Irfan and Chelsea.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear us all right?
I can.
Yes. Hi. Thanks. My name is Irfan Bimji. I'm one of the residents across the way on Mountain View Drive. I had a couple of quick fire questions. One, where is the hotel on this map? I kind of missed that. It'd be great if this map could be updated with annotations rather than gradient shades of colors. But where's the hotel located?
So the way our project's designed, you could either have like a hotel on this front pad area, or you could have a hotel up in the town center.
Okay. And then the park and ride that you mentioned, are you proposing that relocates to the opposite side of the road from where it is today?
It's right where I'm circling. I don't think we have any need to like take away what's there, but we've heard from both the county and VDOT that I guess more parking is needed, and that a park and ride over here would be well received.
Okay. And then I guess my maybe more in-depth question is, what measures are being put in place to preserve the region? You mentioned several times in your opening statements about how this place feels like you're in the Shenandoah Valley, that you feel like you're on a mountaintop, and clearly we're putting quite a bit of retail, residential, a lot of paved spaces. So what's the plan as far as preserving that current environment, not only for the potential future residents, but also the neighbors in the region? And more specifically, thinking about things like light pollution, noise pollution, things like that.
Sure. So some of the things that we are required to do just as a standard issue with Albemarle County, they have dark sky ordinances. So any lighting that goes in associated with the new development has to be dark sky compliant. So there can be, it's pretty much no uplighting. And then Interstate 64, as well as Route 29, are entrance corridors within the county. So they both require a certain level of buffering to the roadway. They want parking to be relegated behind buildings as much as possible. So they're going to require more extensive plantings, as well as design review of any buildings that are visible from those roadways. So you can see for this site, it's probably going to be pretty much any building within the development will require design review. I do think it's a balance. Like I said in the start, in the county, there's only 5% of the land that's in development area. We do have a need for a lot more housing in this area. It's getting less and less affordable every day. So these are the areas, we're not generating more land within the development area just yet. That may happen in the comprehensive plan, but it certainly hasn't happened in a very long time. So I think that it really is a balancing act of taking the land that we have, recognizing the natural elements of it, looking at what's desired within the comprehensive plan, which is, you know, a regional mixed use center with up to 34 dwelling units per acre. So it's a pretty, it's meant to be a pretty intensive development here, but you have that combined with all of the topography. So I think what you see is a balancing act of all those elements, but I hope kind of understanding the buffers, the entrance corridor, and the lighting standards maybe helps a little bit.
Sure. I think keeping in mind that it's on a critical slope, so that the highest points are going to be more visible than obviously they are today. But also when you mention uplighting, hotels may not use uplighting, but they glow. So do gas stations at night, providing quite a bit of light pollution. I travel quite a bit for work, and I might show up to a hotel at 1 a.m. It's very bright. So I think there's some concerns there over these, maybe not the residential spaces, but maybe the more commercial spaces, as it relates to the visibility from the roadway, but also from the neighborhood. You know, we can see 29 from our homes, even in the summertime, but in the wintertime, we need to take, you know, that needs to be factored in as well. You know, you can do so many plantings, but leaves eventually fall off trees, and you're able to then see through. And that, again, allows light and things like that to shine through. So I know that this is only the beginning stages, but to echo Slava and Emily's comments, we understand that, you know, that there may be a need for development, additional housing, additional schools, but also the current neighborhood and the current environment as it stands, you know, needs to be preserved as well.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Irfan. Next, we have Lois Wagner. You're on mute, Lois, but you are permitted to talk if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
This is a follow-up question to the Slava's comments. It's not just a concern about me getting into my teal lane to get to my home, or even my friends or visitors, but I'm also concerned about ingress and egress for emergency vehicles, ambulances, fire engines, that kind of thing. So that's one concern I have. Another one is that you're saying, seeming to imply that it will not be to get to our lane or teal lane coming south on 29, that we would have to go down to that quote unquote traffic light and make a U-turn and then go across the traffic lanes and go over to get onto Teal Lane. But then I heard, I think you, Carl, say that it's not even a real traffic light, that it's just sort of a modified traffic light, and that there would be no abatement of traffic coming 29 on north on 29, make it even more frightening for somebody who has to make a U-turn to get across 29 to their entrance to their community on Teal Lane. So that's two issues I have with respect to traffic. And I also have an issue with respect to internet access. How is all that going to work? But first, the traffic.
Yeah, sure. I'll let Carl comment on the traffic, because I think that it's what you're describing in terms of that secondary issue is not the way that it actually works. Carl, you want to hop in?
Sure. Yeah, just to clarify, if the median break at Teal Lane is closed and we have the green T scenario, because of the way the green T has to be channelized, it cannot accommodate a southbound U-turn at the light where the green T will be. And it's definitely a real signal. I would describe it as a partial signal because it's only stopping one direction of 29. It's only stopping the southbound direction to let people out. So under that scenario, you would actually have to go past where the green T is, like right where the number 29 is on the drawing, and just go to the next median break and then make a U-turn and then turn right onto teal. But like I said earlier, there are a couple scenarios we're looking at where you would not have to do that, where the median break at teal would remain open for the southbound left turn, just like it is today.
Okay. And the emergency vehicle issue?
Right. Are you asking about emergency access to Teal Lane or to the project?
I am talking about ingress and egress for emergency vehicles into Sherwood Farms, not the project.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So like I said earlier, it's almost certain that the left turn out from Teal is going to be restricted by a median, or that median break will be modified in such a way that you can't turn left out. And I mean, that would apply to all vehicles, passenger cars and emergency vehicles. So they would be under the same rules as everybody else. Now at least with they can turn their lights on, like an ambulance or a fire truck. If they're leaving Teal Lane and need to go south on 29, they can preempt the signal at the ramp, the new signal there at the off ramp to 64 East, and probably make a U-turn there, as opposed to going all the way up to Fontaine and making the U-turn.
I don't think that they would be heading south from, if they were leaving Teal Lane.
Right.
Emergency vehicle.
Yeah.
They'd probably be headed towards the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah. If they have to transport somebody, they'd almost certainly be going north on 29.
That's getting us out of here, but not getting into here.
Right.
Right.
Well, getting to the neighborhood, like I said, there are a couple access scenarios where both the southbound left is preserved. So there'd be no change to the inbound movement in a couple of the access scenarios.
Sounds like that would be more preferable to the neighborhood.
Yeah. Certainly a point in favor of, one of the other options, and it'd be a negative to the green T scenario. There's some positives to the green T, but that's one of the downsides is the impact to the Teal Lane medium break, and we certainly are taking that into account.
I think my second question had to do with internet access. What are the plans for that?
Okay. Yeah, I can't help with that one.
I don't know that I can either. I haven't gotten that far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let's see. So next on our list is Bob Hiroski.
So my neighbors have already made a couple of points that I think are common to us. One thing that I would point out is that the U-turns that are further south on 29 tend to have less of a deceleration lane than the one that we have currently at Teal. And they're also used by non-local traffic. We often see cars making turns because maybe they missed the entrance to 29. So that might need improvement as well. An additional downside of the green T is that it blocks our neighborhood from access to the park, if that ever comes to be in the future, which would be a big downside. In general, 29 and 64, have always been somewhat dangerous, as we've heard earlier. I believe MK's comment mentioned this, and it appears to be slightly improved with the light, because there's a little bit less jockeying, there's less tension in the traffic. But now we're adding additional jockeying, right? Coming off of the green T, cars are still going to have to jockey across 2 lanes of traffic. You know, at highway speeds, it's about 12, 13 seconds to jockey through that traffic. So I feel like we are sort of adding, you know, attention to the traffic model by doing this. And just one follow-up on traffic before my other comments is that, you know, I think we'd all be very curious to see these alternatives. And, you know, it's not clear from this discussion whether they are being truly seriously studied, since they're not being presented. And then, so as I don't monopolize the time, maybe I'll make one more comment, which is that, you know, this development is an island, right, which is only accessible by car. And, you know, is this the way that we really want to go, to do more developments that lack, you know, pedestrian or bicycle access? And in particular, we're, you know, 2 miles from UVA in this development, and, you know, and the hospital and Main Street, and, you know, no safe options exist except by car to do that commute. So this is going to, you know, tremendously reduce the value of this property, or at least the interest in this property by the UVA community, who and people working at the hospital and people needing to get downtown because of parking restrictions and cost, et cetera. So it really seems like a backward way for us to be doing, quote, high dense development, when we're really taking away, you know, the advantages of being in an urban development, which is being able to get somewhere without a car. And that is extremely, extremely disappointing. So I'll stop there. My other comments have mostly been made, and leave time for my neighbors.
Bob, did you have suggestions for how to get across 29 and make that bike friendly?
Well, if the green T were there, it would be impossible to cross 29 in a bike-friendly manner, right? If the you would have a chance, at least during non-rush hour, if the green T wasn't there. But, you know, my other comment was about the ability of residents in this neighborhood to cross 64, right? To enter the urban, you know, it's an urban development without the urban amenity of being able to get somewhere without a car. I mean, what, you know, that just, it seems like a backwards, you know, way of doing a high density development.
I have a suggestion that also hasn't been brought up, similar to Evan's comment about the roundabout, would be a bridge. I mean, if you put a pedestrian and vehicle bridge across 29 at the lower entrance there, with acceleration similar to Park Street or the Locust Avenue connections on the 250 bypass. I haven't heard anybody mention that, but that would certainly safely get bicyclists to the other side, pedestrians to the other side, and eliminate all of these north and southbound traffic concerns. I know you'd have to have some space for on ramps and off ramps, but the further south you go with that situation, the more possible that becomes. The next person is Rad, and I just want to say we have obviously gone well over our allotted time here, so I will be cutting this off. We have Rad, Nathan, and then Ben. And then we will move on to our next agenda item.
Okay. I would like to point out a couple of things. One is that if you do the green tea at the new drive, part of that proffer is going to have to be improving the next median cut south on Route 29. The existing median cut has a bad sight line. It has a too short deceleration lane. And there's a reason the teal lane that all the U-turn traffic happens at teal lane. It's because that's the safest place to do it. You've got a clear sight line north and south from there. That is not true further south at Shepherd's Mill Road, I think it is, whatever it is.
Shepherd's Hill.
Shepherd's Hill Road. The other point I think I would make is that, yeah, MK's idea of building a bridge across 29 has been proposed. A tunnel has been proposed at different times. The basic problem is that we're still landlocked from Charlottesville by Interstate 64. There is no way to get anything but a car north on 29 into the Urbis, into the urban center. Your choices are sneaking through red fields and hoping that you don't get abused for trespassing on somebody's land, or walking parallel to the railroad track and hoping to not get run over by a train. That's pretty much it. As for Ashley's question about what do you propose? Well, I would say you're the developer and maybe you should consider that problem because you're the people who want to put something here that's not here now. And at that point, I would like to hand it to my wife for a couple small questions.
Hi, I have a question for the Citizens Advisory Committee. First, thank you for hosting the meeting. I know we're going to run long. I wanted to know if you would be open to adding representation from the Shepherd's Hill and Sherwood Farms area, given that we will be the most directly affected by this project. And yet there's no process in place at this point for us to have representation on a Citizens Advisory Council. We are intimately familiar with the school situations, with the traffic aspects. Our traffic would be the one limited to, we only have a single access point to our neighborhood, which I understand is opposed to current county code, which required 2. So we would be limited to 1 entry and exit point with only 1 entrance point. Anyway, so first, would you guys consider adding representation?
Happy to answer your question. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. I got Rad, but
oh, I'm sorry. I'm Christine Davis. I don't have much of a voice because I'm recovering from COVID.
That's okay. Hi, Christine. I'm recovering from a summer cold, so I understand. I'm Mary Catherine. I'm the chair of the 5th and Avon Community Advisory Committee, and unfortunately, as an advisory committee, we do not have a vote, is the first thing I want to clarify. So our purpose is to host these types of meetings for the county, for people to provide their feedback to the county planners and the supervisors. And we also provide feedback, and we meet monthly. So it's a group of people who has maybe a little bit further knowledge of how the process works and provides feedback regularly, but we don't actually vote or have a say so. And we have a vacancy because one of our members had to resign this week. So you are more than welcome to go on the county website. I will email you the link if you send me your email. And we would love to have you on the group.
Well, that's fantastic.
you get a
I'm not necessarily nominating myself. We have many capable community members who might do the job better than me. Okay, great. My other question was, and this may be directed either at Ms. Davies or Mr. Langille. This is kind of a hybrid project. It's both a neighborhood model and it draws traffic off of Interstate 64. Is there precedent for neighborhood models drawing transient interstate traffic via items such as a hotel and a gas station into urban neighborhoods?
I don't know if Cameron wants to take that. I just would say that in terms of what the comprehensive plan is asking for at the site is a regional mixed use center instead of like a neighborhood type center. So for Brook Hill, that was not a regional mixed use center. That was supposed to be more neighborhood oriented uses. But I think because this property is specifically located just off the interstate, they did imagine it, and I'm losing my voice too after all this talking, but they did imagine it drawing in traffic from outside of the neighborhood. I can't speak to other examples that are similar to that in the county there.
I can jump in and say, yeah, this is, it's a unique situation with the location of this parcel. We don't really have a similar neighborhood model district along the highway at any of our exits. I mean, I guess the closest thing you could look at would be Old Trail out in Crozet, but there's substantially less non-residential uses in that project than there would be here with the SIG proposal. So it is an interesting case, but Ashley did summarize it. You know, the vision when the master plan was adopted was that this would be a sort of a regional draw, and it would bring people into the development as well as have a somewhat neighborhood feel in the residential portion.
Now you can talk.
I'm sure this is my last point. I'm sure many of you are parents, as am I, but as a parent and as someone who lived as a single woman alone for many years, I would be deeply uncomfortable having transient interstate traffic coming into my neighborhood where my children were outside playing. And that was all I had to say for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate your time and for coming and for the comments. Okay, Nathan, you've been so patient. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to cede my time to the citizens at this point, since it's but anyways, they can go ahead at this point. I think the issues have been covered regarding traffic and schools, and that was, you know, my main point at this point.
You're muted, MK.
Oh, sorry. So thank you, Nathan. All right, I said last but not least is going to be Ben. And then I do see Donna, who will go very last.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. I live in Sherwood Farms, also, like a lot of the other neighbors who've talked. And yeah, I think I'm just concerned, like, I really have no desire to be a NIMBY. Like, I want something really good to go in this space. It is a unique space in the access that it has. It is a really cool part of the county. I do think there is a really cool, thoroughly thought out, feasible project that could go here. And I feel like the pattern I'm seeing, just whether it's discussing the traffic patterns, the number of school children, the number of residential units versus the amount of retail, there's just really wide ranges and a lot of vagueness about which options are in play. And my worry is that the approach is to sort of keep all options open as long as possible, and then kind of just put together a mishmash of things that actually isn't going to be either a desirable neighborhood for the people living there, or a good neighbor for the current residents, or a safe traffic corridor for all the people that are commuting and what's already, you know, a place with fatalities and serious accidents on a regular basis. So I just hope that things won't really move forward until there actually is a plan that people feel is actually a really good plan that's workable and safe and feasible. And maybe that's what this is. And I am being a NIMBY, and I'm definitely open to hearing that. But that isn't the impression that I've gotten from the presentation and the discussion so far tonight. So anyway, thank you very much for hosting this.
Thank you, Ben. Donna?
Thank you, MK. And of course, as you know, as supervisor, I hold off on any substantive comments until an application actually makes its way to the board. But just for a point of clarification for Ms. Davis, the ultimate decision of appointments to CACs and any of the other 65 or so boards, committees, and commissions under the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors are ultimately made by the board and not the individual committee. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, whether it be you or someone else who is interested in applying, that there's not a misimpression or misunderstanding as to where that decision-making for appointments is held. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. I did realize I did clarify that in my statement as well. And I do want to ask either Cameron, I think Cameron can help to answer Ben's question a little bit, but I do believe, and maybe some of the other CAC members will remember this, you know, once the rezoning is approved, then it is rezoned the way it is. It does have the code of development, but as long as the developer proposes uses that are within the code of development, there's a site plan approval, but as far as densities go, we don't get to go back and change that or have questions about it, correct?
That is correct. unless the developer does another zoning map amendment, as we call it, to either add or remove uses or change the density. If this ZMA were to be approved as it is now, that would lock in that density range and the uses that are currently listed in the Code of Development.
So I think that it's a very good way for us to end this discussion. And Ben, I really appreciate your comment, because we've had several comments about the broad range of density that's proposed here in the different uses. And, you know, statements that right now the plan is somewhere in the middle, but for everyone to be aware that if the zoning amendment is approved with the broad range, then there is no secondary review about what the developer can actually do once that zoning is approved and changed. So possibly we might recommend a less broad range for the final approval. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mr. Collins. And Nicole, I think no, there was one more person you had. Natalie, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Natalie. We really appreciate everyone's time there. Thank you, Cameron. And thank you to all the neighbors from Sherwood Farm who came to speak about the project.
MK, if I may jump in for just 1 second, I just want to say,
absolutely,
if there's any members of the public who are watching this right now and you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, please do not worry. You can send me an email or give me a phone call with any comments, questions, or thoughts you have on this project. I had it up earlier. My email is the letter B as in boy, and then my last name, which is LANGILLE @albemarle.org. I'd be glad to hear from anyone who has anything else to say. And thank you to the CAC. I got to say, this was probably one of the most helpful community meetings I've ever presided over. So I thank everyone for their comments and thoughts, and you'll see some of these questions get raised in our comment letter. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone as well. This was a really great listening session for us. And, you know, as you can see, we're at this concept level, but it's really helpful for us to hear all of the feedback. This is a large and complex development that we're still working through the details. So this is a great time to hear any feedback from neighbors and committee members. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Ashley. And I'll just say to our attendees who were really here for that portion of the agenda, I know it's been a long meeting, but if you can hang on for a few minutes, our supervisors and our planning commissioners will give us a brief update on what's going on elsewhere in the county. And I always find that very useful. So let's see, where do we start? Donna, your hand is still raised, so why don't you go first?
And apologize for leaving that hand up, but I guess we'll take that. I'll be as quick as possible. Next Wednesday, the board is having a retreat at the Fork. This is for strategic planning. This is year 0, and we're looking at a 5-year plan, FY24 to FY29. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. And that'll be a half-day retreat. The school board earlier this week had a convocation for anybody who's got anyone involved in the school system. It was a great event. All employees throughout the county from the school system were there. Really a good way to get energized coming out of the pandemic. Last night we had a couple of public hearings. They were related to the same development, Old Dominion Village over in Crozet. But what was significant, I think, beyond that particular application are some of the discussions we had about 100-year flood plan. Can we rely on that anymore given climate change? You look at the flooding that took place in Kentucky just a couple of weeks ago. You look at Europe where the rivers are almost bone dry. You look out west where it's dry. I saw an article this morning that's projecting that the Mississippi River Valley and the east coast of the United States in the next few years will start to experience temperatures as high as 125 degrees. And so we really have to make sure that we're implementing our climate action plan into all phases of development. And I think that goes to things like, insulation, window treatments, gray water rather than fresh water in your toilet system. Water savings. We're fortunate right now. We don't think about droughts because we've had a pretty wet year, but anyone who's been around for 20 years or so remembers the 2000-2001 drought. I was in it. I grew up in Atlanta, the largest city in the Southeast, and they were literally one day away from running out of water. So we have to take action now to prepare for what we can clearly see is coming our way. The other things that we talked about are, oh shoot, I lost my place here. I brought up more information about industrial solar installation. Coming out of the program I'm in at the Sorensen Institute, we want to pay very close attention to what type of soils are being considered for that type of a development. Much like you just heard in this presentation for you tonight, where a lot of the land within the boundary of this proposed development are steep slopes, critical slopes, areas where you can't do development. Well, I think we need to be considering when we have an industrial solar application, are we looking at putting that on, grades 1, 2, 3, or 4 of land, which is our prime agricultural land, or should it be on 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is the lesser quality lands? There are just so many things that we have to look at in these industrial solar applications. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim because I think I've probably hit most of the main points I wanted to do in a very brief period of time, given the late hour. Thank you, MK.
And I will also try to be brief given the hour, but I do want to thank everyone on this call for what I thought was an excellent discussion of this particular application. There's a lot more to talk about with this, and I hope in addition, of course, Cameron's email, you have mine, and feel free to contact me about things. Also, feel free to contact me about people who are still on the call about joining the CAC, and I can talk about that process in a little bit more detail. Donna covered a lot of the highlights. We have, some good news that's come out recently. The micro transit grant that doesn't directly affect our area, the 5th and Avon, the study grant was approved. So we'll be looking at more micro transit options and hope those eventually make their way into other areas that are less well served by our CAT and other services. We also have heard good things about the 3-notch trail planning grant that was approved for $2 million to study that, which again, it's countywide big project that'll take a lot of time to sort through. Just a quick note, we have a new county attorney, Steve Rosenberg. I have the pleasure tomorrow of actually giving him a tour of the Samuel Miller District. So I will perhaps be driving through your neighborhood. Like I said, Donna hit a lot of the highlights. We still have an update, I believe, on the agenda about meetings coming up in September and how we're going to change the rules. So I'll leave time for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred, do you have anything to add from the Planning Commission?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. And again, I'll also be super brief. It's been a relatively quiet month on the Planning Commission. We've had a couple of applications deferred. I think everyone knows this, but the Planning Commission website has a lot more detail on what I'm about to tell you. So I'll keep it really short and sweet. This coming Tuesday, we'll be looking at a continuation of our work sessions. Tori and others have been leading us through some really, I think, really helpful information at the county level. Managing growth is one of the subjects. Zoning ordinance modernization is the one that's coming up this week. So that's an interesting process as we continue to move forward on the comprehensive plan revision trail. The other two projects that are coming up on Tuesday, one had been not deferred, but we couldn't hear it 2 weeks ago because of some details. But it's the Verizon Scrooby property. Some of you may have heard about that. It's in the Whitehall district and it's adjacent to a historic district. The request is for a super tall monopole, and there have been concerns about aesthetics, visibility from entrance corridors and other issues. that need to be dealt with. And on the flip side is the need to provide cellular service to an area that currently has very poor cellular service. So it's sort of a public health, safety, and welfare balance issue, I think. And then another one that might be of interest is the Clifton Inn and Colina Farm. They are looking to do a significant expansion. In a nutshell, they're requesting to rezone, I want to make sure I get this right, 28 acres, just a little bit over 28 acres from planned residential district to rural area district, and a special use permit for taverns, inns as well. And that is an opportunity to grow their goal, I think, to increase services in the way of, let's see, bed and breakfasts, 52-seat restaurant, 200 persons on site, etc. So again, more detail on that, but Clifton Inn and Colina Farm, which is adjacent to it, are looking to expand as well. So those are the highlights from the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Fred. James, do you have a question?
I just wanted to super quickly say this is my my last meeting with the CAC, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's worked with me and for me, especially to Tori for organizing everything, MK for always having my back, Craig for always taking the notes, David and Roger for always being mentors and sort of showing me the ropes, and Roger and Karen for always being there and letting me know when, hey, it's time to recognize somebody or do something. It's been such an awesome experience for me. I'm really pumped that you guys get to meet in person in September. As many of you know, I live in Alexandria now. I'll be back in Charlottesville in 23 months and 12 days. I texted Sean earlier. I'm counting down every last day till I get to be back in your community. But it's been a really, really, really awesome experience. I've learned a ton and just enjoyed serving with you, and appreciate the time and education you all have given me.
Thanks, James. We really appreciate your service, and you stole my secret, but I was gonna give you a huge thank you. And so here it is. We couldn't have made it through the last 2 years without your leadership. So we really appreciate your time.
Sorry, and thanks, MK.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Thank you so much, James.
Okay, so the last item of business would be our meeting location for our next meeting. As everyone knows, the county says that we have to see each other in person. Some people seem excited about that. I've had at least one member ask a question about the facility that we used to meet at. We used to meet at room C in the 5th Street office building, and that room has a capacity of 16 people. And we are a 15-person committee, and that doesn't include the county staff people that attend, as well as the planning commissioners and the board of supervisors. Not to mention, tonight we had 28 members of the community virtually attend the meeting. So if we have future meetings in that room, there's a concern about space. Tori has done some background work for us. Thank you, Tori, to look at alternatives. So I think first, I just would like to say that do other people agree that this is something we should look at a different, bigger space? So our options would be in the McIntyre County Office Building, the old high school. There's a room there that we could go to that would have a capacity for 25 people that would accommodate us through September, October, November, and December, the end of 2022, basically. The room, just so you know, the other room at 5th Street, the big room at 5th Street, sorry, I gotta remember what room it is. The room A is booked every evening for the rest of the year somehow. So, but Tori said it will be available, or it's intended to be available in the evenings in 2023. So right now we just need to fill the need for our next 4 meetings of 2022. So again, our options would be a room 246 at McIntyre, which is a 25-person room with 6 tables, or Mountain View has a room in the media center, which can accommodate approximately 100 people. And it would also be available for those 4 months. Go ahead, David.
A couple of other suggestions, if I could.
Yep.
I've really liked room B in the Fifth Street County Office Building. It's across the hall from room C. I know that public safety uses that space, but if we can get in there, that's a good space with a good projection system and some tables that we were able to work with 1 or 2 times that we were there. Also, the firehouse off of Mill Creek Drive has a good space that we've used on occasion. I really like the idea more of keeping it in the footprint of the CAC as opposed to moving to McIntyre. And lastly, room A is probably in use as the early voting space for the county. That probably takes them through early November at a minimum in terms of being booked and that sort of thing. Those are the things I have. Room B would be my first choice. Firehouse would be the second, and then taking it out of the footprint would be last. The media center isn't great at Mountain View, simply because many of the chairs are sized for elementary school students. And so it becomes an interesting thing. I'd recommend looking at the cafeteria as a different space if we had to go over to that space.
Tori, did you check for room B?
I did, and that one was not available either. And it sounds like the fire stations aren't available at this time yet either. And I did check the media center at Monticello High School, but it was not available for the CAC evenings. It was already booked for other events. I think the cafeteria might be an option though for Mountain View.
The acoustics in that space are not great though.
So could we live with little tiny seats for 4 meetings? Or do we want to go downtown?
I would recommend going to the McIntyre office building. I think it's just set up with good acoustics, good seating. It's convenient.
I have a hard time when you take it out of the community. So when you have a community meeting like tonight, how many of those folks from Sherwood Farms are going to make that trip up 29 and across and into downtown for this? I think taking it out of the footprint really is going to hurt participation. They've got a space across the hall from the media center that might work, Tori. Do you want to talk to the folks at Mountain View to use that space? I can't remember what we're calling it these days, but that we've had meetings in there that have been 30. I think we put 30 people in there pretty comfortably.
It's not the library.
No, it's right across the hall from the library. It's a maker space. I haven't really been in the building in 2 years, so I can't tell you what it is. We've been in the cafeteria for all the Cub Scout stuff. Evan's got something.
Just a question: is like the Cavalier or the Cavalry Chapel or the Jehovah's Witness churches off the table? They don't get used on weeknights often. I mean, we'd probably have to pay them, but I'm presuming we also have to pay the schools. I could be wrong about this. Like, they have parking. They clearly have acoustics. They're churches. They have not much going on Thursday nights when we drive past them. And they're in the district.
I'm assuming we don't pay the schools. Do we pay the schools, Tori?
No, we don't.
Okay, I apologize. That's my bad.
That's okay. Okay, so go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say, if it's a temporary basis, I would be fine with Mountain View cafeteria. I mean, unless we're having big community meetings like this, it's just a small group of us. I don't know that it's that hard to hear a small group sitting around a couple tables in the cafeteria.
Is that for some reason preferred over the media center because of chair types or something? Or does it really matter?
I'm fine either way. The chairs in the cafeteria are elementary school kid size. I mean, I sit in them every year to do polling, and it's not the most comfortable chairs. Maybe it'll make our meeting shorter.
All right. So is there a motion?
I move to do it at the county office building.
Okay, Roger. Is there a second to Roger's motion to meet in room 246 at the McIntyre County Office Building? Okay.
I move Mountain View Elementary School.
I second it.
Okay. So we have a seconded motion to, and Roger, I'm sorry, your motion was not seconded, so it dies with a first. We have a motion for Mountain View Elementary School Media Center. And is there any further discussion? Anyone want to make any other comments?
I heard that the motion was for Mountain View. I didn't hear for the media center.
That is correct.
I think if we vote on this, I think we can then let Tori and maybe MK figure out the best space in Mountain View.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. If we go for the location, then maybe Tori can help us evaluate which is the better one, and we can go from there as we experience it in September, hopefully.
Okay. So Evan, if you'll allow a friendly amendment to your motion, the motion is to move the meeting for the rest of 2022 to Mountain View Elementary School in a room to be determined by Tori/MK.
Happily accepted. That was my intention with the motion in the first place.
And Roger seconds. Any more discussion?
Not second.
I'm sorry, Robert.
Yeah.
Craig, it was Robert who seconded, not Roger. Okay, all in favor of the motion to move to Mountain View? I see 1, 2, I will vote. Okay. All opposed would be Roger. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any abstain? James, did you abstain? Or did you vote?
I voted. I'm in.
Okay. So 9, 4, 1 against. The motion carries. All right, everybody.
Motion to adjourn.
I was like, let me find my run of show. I think that's it. All right. Thank you. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, September 15th, and will be held in person at Mountain View Elementary. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Okay.